Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here with something a bit different from anything I've ever done before. This is not a reaction video, obviously, and it's also not a scripted out, structured review like I was doing for MLP for a while. No, this is more of a freeform ramble, just collecting my thoughts, following that amazing finale we had last week for Star vs. the Forces of Evil. And I'm doing this because, that amazing finale kind of triggered something with me. It hit that point finally where I had to go back and rewatch Star all over again and start exploring other people's reactions, which is something that happens with me after a while with a show that I really end up liking. And I didn't even know if that was going to happen for sure with Star. At the start, I didn't think I'd ever reach that point with the series, because there are series that I don't really reach that point with. But for this one, it finally has happened. It happened somewhere in the middle of Season 3 for Steven Universe, happened after Volume 3 for Ruby. It happened now for Star, and the past few days I've just been watching Star nonstop, taking it all in again, and noticing things that I hadn't noticed before, putting things together in a different way, and just really enjoying it, and finding I had a lot to talk about, a lot to say, and not really anywhere to say it, because I'm not going to really get a chance to talk about Star again until Season 3, where I guess I could do a review, but I don't really have time to make a video that calls for more intensive editing or anything like that. So this just seemed easier and the best way to tackle this. Anyway, let's get started, and I'll start with a topic that is of deep interest to me, and probably to a lot of you: shipping. Yeah, this channel does a lot of shipping, and for Star vs. the Forces of Evil, I've kind of moved in a weird direction with ships. I kind of favor some of the less, I guess, probable ones. My favorite ship now is Hekapoo, and my second favorite is Starna. And, yeah, I know neither one's going to happen, since, it's obviously not going to, there's no way they do either of those things. I guess Starna is more probable, though it would be awful bold if they went in that direction. And if you really don't get it, let me just explain quickly. Hekapoo I like because there's a clear chemistry between the characters shown in the episode Running with Scissors. They just have this great sort of back and forth. Hekapoo teasing Marco, and Marco just sort of throwing it back a bit, and also seeming to be pretty okay with all of it. I mean, he there's this sense that he wants to stay with Hekapoo, and there's also this sense that he's kind of into her, and she's definitely flirty, and it's just this great amount of chemistry. And there's also just a romanticism to the whole situation. This endless chase, this sort of game of cat and mouse that they play throughout countless years and ages, and it's a lot of fanfic potential, I think. I mean, those 16 years, you could tell a lot of stories in there, and it's just rife with the possibility of all this stuff, and that's really appealing to me. And I mean, Marco spent 16 years chasing Hekapoo, so there's that too. That's more than the time he spent looking like having a crush on Jackie, and it's more time than he spent with Star by far. So there's that. And as for the Starna thing, that's just, again, based on chemistry in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not really a clearly romantic chemistry there. I mean, they're just friends, really. But I kind of like reading it that way. I mean, Girls Day Out, there is sort of some scenes that do kind of suggest something. I mean, I don't know, it's probably just reading too much into it, but it's cute. And I like how Janna does sort of like to be there for Star. She really seems reliable for her, and putting her there, even putting herself in a situation to be there for Star, even when it does sort of make her seem like she's kind of frustrated with how Star's acting. And she also really seems to get how Star's mind works in a way that other characters don't. I mean, she was able to really control her in Girls' Day Out and get her to sort of do things even when she didn't initially want to. And she really knows what Star's thinking about beforehand, and again, it's stuff that really just speaks to a deep connection that could just be friendship, but it's fun. But to move on to the ships that people actually care about, let's talk about Jarco versus Starco. I said during my reaction series a few times early on that I was okay with Starco. I thought it was probably a fine ship, and if it wanted to go in that direction, I'd be pretty cool with it. And that's really just a feature of how it is initially set up through the early parts of Season 1. There is this sort of maybe not in terms of how they feel about each other, and it's capitalized really well, obviously, in the Blood Moon Ball episode. That's where it really comes to a boil, and we honestly have to start questioning it. And that is an episode of deep implication, and it's where a lot of Starco shippers like to go with the whole ritual and their souls being bound together. But I don't think that necessarily means that they have to be in love. Which might seem odd, but a connection doesn't have to be romantic. It just that they are counterparts in a way. It doesn't necessitate anything more. And I think it might honestly be more interesting if they don't end up together. And yeah, I can say it now, but I really have sort of gone to the Jarco side pretty fully here. And a lot of the reason is that I don't think Marco does like Star in that way. I think it's pretty clear at this point that he doesn't. Truth or punishment? The truth was Jackie, and it was pretty deep, really sincere, and sure, the ultimate message was that the truth can change, but I don't know. I don't think it will, since I don't know why it would. And the same goes with Naysaya. Naysaya didn't say anything about Star or anything there. These were all of Marco's deepest insecurities laid out there, and there wasn't even anything suggestive with this girl that he's living with, so yeah, I don't think there is anything deeper there that he's hiding. And maybe he could still learn to love Star, but I don't know. Because again, when it's revealed in the song, in Face the Music, the reaction makes it pretty clear that this is a shock to him, and he doesn't even know how to take this. He's never even considered it. And honestly, if he does come around to liking Star, that would hurt his character, I think. Because that would make the love triangle kind of rather resemble the one in Legend of Korra in a lot of ways. And I don't think very many of us like that. That was kind of a bad example of a love triangle, and for the moment this is still a good example of one. And just Marco and Jackie is remarkably sincere. I kind of thought with how it was originally set up that we were going in the direction where Marco was just sort of putting Jackie on a pedestal as a prize to win, that she was just this ideal girl that he was looking to, and that's really what it was. And if there was ever going to be any forward progress, it would eventually end with him learning that they're not really meant for each other, that there isn't really any chemistry there, that it's not just meant to be. Because that's how that thing sort of usually goes when they go to that trope. But that isn't what they did at all. In fact, they sort of called that out in the Truth or Punishment game. Marco said that he acknowledged that he was sort of putting Jackie on that pedestal, and insisted instead that she deserves someone who will really be there for her. And it was really sweet. And then when they did get together, the chemistry was pretty perfect. They really work well together. Jackie is great for Marco at getting deep down under his insecurities and making him lighten up and loosen up and just be comfortable and better. It just works. I don't know what I'm saying. And I kind of don't want to see that get wrecked for Star, especially since her reactions are not really... Yeah, her reactions to the whole Jarco thing are persistently associated with negativity and dark magic. She's sort of throwing tantrums in a way. She's looking at them with envious eyes. She even, subconsciously or not, hurts them when she first sees it with the Seeing Eye spell in Bonbon. She causes them to fall off the skateboard and all that. And then when she sees them again later in the episode, she turns her portal spell into her vortex spell into a, uncontrolled dark vortex that threatens to suck everyone up. And then in Just Friends, she destroys the sign, and just all of it, she's reacting in a very negative way to it. And if she actually got what she wanted, I don't think that would work very well. It would come across completely the wrong way. And the story would be far more potent and more emotionally mature if Star doesn't get what she wants. If she has to come to terms with not getting her way for once and just sort of going from there. I think that would make for a more potent drama and a more resonant and actually interesting relationship dynamic than breaking up Jarco just so Star can get exactly what she wants. Even though I do sympathize with her. I mean, it's hard not to. She really cares about Marco. She really loves him, and it's obvious. And that situation, it's not a good situation to be in. But that doesn't mean that she should destroy everything that is there, especially since it is so nice. So yeah, I'm definitely on the Jarco side of the argument there. I don't think Starco would be a good idea. And on that subject of Star and her darker feelings and how that is something we've really emphasized, I think that Star is on a path towards becoming a darker character, sort of moving towards the side of evil. Which, in this series, I mean, evil is kind of subjective. There is sort of a lot of moral gray, more than you'd expect for this sort of thing, with how the monsters are portrayed, and all that. And I think the situation on Muni is a little bit just weird like that, where evil might be justified, or what they're calling evil. So that might add to Star's willingness to sort of switch sides or find a new path. And with how the dark magic she's been using has been emphasized, I really do think that we are going that way. And I do think that now that she's been separated from Marco, she might be even more likely to go that way, because she's just going to have all this resentment bottled up, especially towards her mother, who kind of took her away from this. I mean, it was Toffee coming back who triggered it, but at the same time, Star being Star, she's going to kind of, I think, blame, just sort of lash out and sort of hold her mother accountable in some ways. And, because there is this sort of complicated thing between the two of them, there's definitely this layer of resentment, and I just see that coming to a boil. And that could push her in some interesting ways. And there are still a lot of flaws that haven't been fully ironed out with Star. She has this brash impulsiveness, and there have been several attempts in various episodes to have her learn to not rely on her magic so much, but it hasn't really stuck. She always sort of goes back to it and ends up causing just mischief with it, just causing mistakes and doing things that she shouldn't with it. I mean, as recently as Collateral Damage, she caused a huge mistake just by blindly casting a spell without really paying attention to what she was doing. She has a lot of her personality she needs to get sorted out. She still runs from her problems. That's been something that's been pointed out before, and she's still doing it. We saw her run away in Face the Music, and in a lot of ways, this whole rebel princess attitude is just her kind of being spoiled in a way. She's allowed to act out, so she does, and she just gets whatever she wants. And I think that can lead her in a direction where she will be more susceptible to the darkness. Because, I mean, consider Page Turner and how, after reading Eclipse's chapter, she says point blank, "This doesn't interest me. I'm not really into this." But in the very next episode, in Bon Bon the Birthday Clown, she uses one of the spells in that chapter. She uses the All-Seeing Eye to spy on Marco and Jackie and do a little more than that. So, I think that there is, when she doesn't get what she wants in one way, there will be a impetus to go this other way and try and get it. And that could be pretty interesting to see. I think that Eclipse might be a big part of sort of being the catalyst to that. I mean, she's bound to return with her being revealed to be in one of Romulus' crystals. I don't know if Toffee will be involved in her return or not, but I think Eclipse will return, and considering how the parallel was made in the baby episode, that Star and Eclipse have this similarity, I do think that Eclipse could really be key to getting this sort of darkness out of Star and leading her on this different path. On the other hand, I think that Ludo might be on a path towards redemption, because the two of them, with the cleaved wand and one having one crystal, the other having the other, they're sort of yin and yang to each other, and if Star is on a path to the dark, I think Ludo might be moving right in the opposite direction. Because again, the monsters are not really evil so much as just oppressed and victims of, like, just crappy circumstances. And Ludo's character now makes a lot of sense. Introducing his family, it just really made everything clear. He's this beaten down child desperate to prove himself, whatever it takes. And he has this obvious desire we saw in the episode with Glossaric, The Hard Way, that he really wants to be loved and accepted, especially by a sort of parent figure, because, I mean, his father clearly sucks. I mean, signs that there's even abuse going on there, and that's not cool. And coming from that situation, Ludo obviously does want to experience these more positive relationships, and he's really hungry for that. And with Dennis asking after him, there's that link, and Dennis even asked Moon to help her brother, and she clearly sympathized with him, and that might go somewhere. And then there was the Glossaric and Toffee scene, which was interesting, because Toffee says you're not going to win him over to your side, and Yes, Glossrick deflected it by saying he didn't have a side, but Toffee bringing it up is evidence of some ploy to change Ludo that Glossrick might be, taking on. Even if he doesn't have a side per se, he still might be making a move to do something with Ludo, and that's interesting. Of course, being controlled by Toffee for the moment, that sort of throws a wrench into things. Ludo is going to have to separate himself or be separated somehow for things to progress in any sort of way, and who knows if that's going to happen anytime soon. But once he does, once Ludo is his own character again, I think that there is going to be this sort of move to move him in a more path to being a more good character. Speaking more on Toffee and Glossrick, I think Toffee's scheme is still largely a pretty intriguing mystery. It is possibly something to do with Eclipsa, I don't know. I do think it's interesting with the Is Mystery episode with Buffrog, just looking at what Toffee was having Ludo orchestrate. It's very intriguing. Just with the replica of Muni Castle, I think Muni might be a likely target for everyone, that they might actually wage war with Muni. And what the use for all the corn is still a question. That might actually just be to feed the monsters. So, again, that might be setting up more of that moral grayness between the monsters and the humans, and it could be a more interesting sort of gray conflict than we might be expecting. Similarly, Glossrick's scheme is pretty mysterious. There is clear evidence there is a scheme, it was even sort of foreshadowed in by the book, where he had an obtuse and roundabout scheme to get what happened in that episode to happen. I think that's setting up that something very similar is happening here, but on a bigger scale. I mean, it would explain his interest in the clown seance in the first place, and with him burning that page and his line about this being what Star needs in Raid the Cave. I think Glossrick is definitely playing a very long game here and has something up his sleeve, and he's probably going to pull it off considering the sort of character he is, and that should be interesting to see. On to the subject of Marco, who I haven't talked about much yet other than in regards to shipping. I think running with scissors is going to be a key to his character, but maybe not in the way that we immediately thought after watching that episode. I mean, I want to look at it as a level, as him achieving new emotional maturity, him growing up 16 years and just changing completely into a more adult character. But watching that episode, adult Marco really was a big kid. He didn't really grow up so much. I mean, those 16 years weren't spent paying taxes and raising a family or anything like that. They were spent going on adventures, fighting monsters, chasing a pretty girl, and doing pretty much exactly what a teenage boy wishes he was doing all the time with his life. So he didn't grow up. He didn't really face decisions of the more emotionally grounded sort. He faced probably difficult decisions in terms of the adventures he went on, but it wasn't like stuff that would change him completely. The ending, I think, rather than new emotional maturity, can just as easily reflect sentimentality and just a jarring disconnect that is going back to his old life. And I think even though there have been signs that Marco maybe is a little more mature since that episode, that isn't what we should necessarily be focusing on. That said, it is still going to be important, I think, because Marco learned a lot there. He learned how to sword fight, which is something that could really come in handy. I mean, he already knew how to fight with karate, and I'm sure he got better with hand-to-hand fighting over the course of those 16 years, but he also learned how to use a sword, and that could really be important, because, I mean, if he is going to have to fight on his own in the future, doing it with a weapon will certainly make him more effective against, real threats. And There was also a throwaway bit of dialogue in that episode where he said he learned a language from dimensional monks or something. And that's a weird thing, but it could very well actually be important. Maybe he knows how to speak this language and it comes in handy somewhere. I also think the scissors will be important because they do belong to him. I don't know if Star left the scissors with him. I mean, she should have, since they do have his name on him. They are his, even though he won them for her. They're really his possession in the ways that matter, and I kind of hope that she did leave him with him. So I'll be eager to see if that's true. There's also the question of who has the finger. Toffee's finger, I mean, when Star's room vanished, did the secrets closet, did everything in it go with her, or how does that really work? Because if the finger is still in the house, that could be pretty important. Though either way, his connection to Star is something that Toffee or Eclipse or whoever else could very well exploit. And I'm sure he's going to be really relevant because of that, regardless. That said, I do think he's going to be pretty independent from Star for a while. He will probably be doing his own thing, but will remain very much involved in a lot of the plot and a lot of the stories, even if it'll be split stories between them for a while. He may even end up on opposite sides from Star. That could be pretty interesting. Like, if Star does go down a very dark path, it could end up with him and Star fighting each other, and that could be an interesting thing. Definitely lots of drama could come from that. Moving on, let's talk about the High Commission a bit. I do think that they will survive whatever happened there with Toffee. I mean, it didn't look great for some of them, but with the exception of Lekmit, who I think really may be dead, since, yeah, he wasn't killed by Toffee, he dissipated reviving Moon, and it was just sort of his own power, him using more of it than he had, and just sort of vanishing into the dust. And because that was so different and separate, I think he really might be gone. But the others, I think they will be fine and they will be relevant, especially since most of them have become pretty popular characters, especially Hekapoo. But yeah, with Romulus and the whole question of the Fritz, I still think it remains as to whether what is causing the leak is either Toffee or Star. Considering his magic sucking powers, I think Toffee seems the more likely option, but I honestly think the more interesting possibility is that it is Star causing it, as Romulus initially assumed. I think that if that is the case and his gut is vindicated, that could be pretty interesting, that Star is somehow emotionally manipulating the universe on this grander scale, and I think that would really raise the stakes and make the drama just that much more interesting. And as for how Romulus himself will come into play, I don't know. He seems pretty... well, with Lekmit dead, that could get a real reaction out of him, because there is definitely this closeness between the two, and if Lekmit is gone for good, that could give Romulus reason to really fight hard, and that could be pretty interesting. As for Hekapoo, she's still awesome, still probably my favorite character somehow. Just came out of nowhere and achieved amazing badass waifu status, and hopefully her ensemble Dark Horse status does convince the writers to give us a lot more of her, and hopefully she gets paired with Marco again. As for Omnitraxis, he's the only other one that might be dead just for how he looked. I mean, I don't know how else he would have looked knocked out, but it was just a skull, so who knows. He really just needs a chance to do more. His key appearance was in a rather inconsequential episode, and then he easily got bested by Toffee without really getting a fair shot to be awesome in the episode. I mean, he did some things on the way there, but during the fight he was just sort of taken out like that, and he really needs a chance to shine more. And As for Moon, I think she will be in a difficult position going forward, especially if Star does sort of rebel in a big way and go on a dark path. That could lead to some real tension. And there is still her promise to Dennis and her promise really to Ludo there at the end, that she, I think she is going to want to go and sort of work to change things with Ludo, and that might become a focus for her. And I actually can see there's sort of a wall building up between her and Star, and also potentially between her and River, and they might move in sort of opposite directions in the story at some critical juncture, and that could be pretty interesting. As for the other characters, I think that Ponyhead, that a lot could be done with Ponyhead going forward. She has a lot of potential for depth, I think, which might be surprising since she's this silly character who just does seem so jokey. But the Bounce Lounge episode, with the Bounce Lounge being so core to her, to who she really is, this sort of light, jokey, fun character, with it being ended now, I think there's this chance for her to move in a new direction and achieve a new sense of maturity. And she also does have a considerable amount of power, and her father seems to be a pretty big deal, and I'm still pretty curious about that. And I do think that there is a good chance that she will end up being a pretty important ally, probably to Marco, since that connection has really been emphasized, the bond between Marco and Ponyhead, even more so than Ponyhead's bond with Star. That's been something that they really have dwelled on, and I think that could just lead to some interesting stuff if Marco does end up becoming like a really deeper friend of her going forward. And similarly, I think Tom is in a very similar situation. He's another powerful character who cares about Star and has had a bond with Marco repeatedly built up and explored across the series. He is another potential real ally for Marco, and I'm interested to see what is done with him in that way. And I guess Janna is another character who could be a potential interesting ally. Because, I mean, she's just a human, but she could be useful on adventures for her slyness and really her instinct and knowledge of the occult. And she cares about Star a lot. I think that it'll be pretty easy for them to keep Janna involved and keep her in the story, even if it does take a more if it does move in a direction more towards adventure stories and away from the school stuff. I think Janna could remain involved pretty easily. Jackie, on the other hand, I don't know. I really like the connection between her and Marco, and I want to stick around in the forefront for a long time, but she's not really as useful as Janna could be. I mean, other than for like diffusing the tension and slicing through Marco's insecurities, she doesn't really have skills that could be of use other than riding a skateboard, which I guess could be useful in some circumstances, but I don't know. Be cool if she learned how to fight somehow. Maybe Marco could teach her. That would be pretty awesome. As for Oskar, I don't think he's going to be very involved going forward. I do think that the final scene was somewhat misunderstood by some people. It seemed very human to me with the stumbles and disconnects between Star and Oskar, but I think Oskar is very genuine, and he does really seem to care about Star, and I think he will be probably pretty hurt by Star's sudden disappearance, though I can't really see him teaming up with Marco to go and try and see her or anything, because there's really not been anything. Marco and Oskar did have that one episode in the car together, but other than that, it hasn't really been a relationship explored to any extent. As for other characters, well, there's that Kelly, who has a pretty badass side, as we saw, and is a pretty interesting character, though, and a character we really know very little about in terms of where she came from or anything other than the fact that she's weird and kind of a troll and has a boyfriend that lives on her head sometimes when they aren't separated. That could be an interesting character to explore more, but I don't know if they will. Buff Frog, I think he's going to be a firm ally of Star going forward, whatever she decides, and may eventually reconcile with Ludo down the line, but I don't really know beyond that. I guess if Marco needs more people to help him, Miss Skolnick could be explored a bit more, and Sensei, that's a character that's been explored a lot, and really more than a lot of other supporting characters. We've had a lot of Sensei, and I don't know if he's really of use to the greater story in any way, but who knows? They've really focused on him a lot, so maybe they have plans. And really the only other important character to comment on is Miss Heinous. And there's definitely something interesting there with her, well, really with the marks on her face. That makes the question of her identity pretty interesting. I never really comment on that because I didn't really pick up on the marks so much. It never really connected with me that that was an exclusive thing to the royal family. So, or seemingly exclusive at least. And with that being the case, the question of her identity is pretty interesting, and what her relation to Star might be. That's something I'm eager to know, though for the most part, her subplot has been one of the more slow to build ones. It's kind of, the wheels have been spinning for a while now. Not a lot of progress. The Quest by episode that she was in, it was pretty much just there to make it clear that she's still around, still going after Star, or going after Marco. Her fixation is with Princess Marco. But neither that or the Heinous episode recently, neither of them really got to any of the greater mystery with her, so there's still so much we don't know there. And yeah, should be interesting to figure it out. Yeah, I don't think I have too much else to say. I'm expecting that with Season 3 we will be getting a real tonal shift. You probably already picked up on that from what I've been commenting on, mostly with their potential in like combat situations. I do think that we are going to go more in an adventure route now that, well, for one thing, school's out. It's summer. Summer vacation. They're not going to have to be at school. They're probably going to be able to go off-world more often, go to other dimensions, and have more exciting adventures. And because of that, I think that part will be more important, how they're able to fight the forces of evil. And though of course it'll probably still keep its relatively light, fun tone, because it wouldn't be the same show without it. I'm not expecting it to go completely grimdark here. Don't think I'm thinking that or anything. I mean, it might come across like that, but that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's still going to be pretty similar, just the situations might change a bit, and there will be a bit more heaviness and drama, since that's really what the stuff with Star is pointed towards at the moment. I think we'll definitely be getting a new outro and new intro next season, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really just eager to see how much is changed. Because really, that finale was a game changer. That really changes everything. And I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. And I've been talking for 40 minutes, so this is probably enough. I don't know if anyone's going to be watching the full of this video, since it's really just me rambling for this length of time, but if you did enjoy this, let me know, and maybe I'll do more videos like this in the future, where I just sort of collect my thoughts and talk about whatever interests me, and just get it all out there. But whatever the case, hope you like this video, and see you in the next one.